So I showed the video, and I got one response that they couldn't hear audio well. Brian, could you hear the video?
I heard nothing, John. I saw I saw
You saw the slides?
Jonathan. I saw the
Okay.
slides. I heard nothing.
Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, here, I think it may be a bandwidth issue. I checked other people who are here in Pretoria that at our site that could hear it. Um, in their separate, rooms. So it may be a bandwidth issue,
Stella Odaba
unfortunately.
is in the room. Stella Odaba, she says at 10:28 or your time 11:28. I'm not able to hear any sound. I don't know if it was okay earlier. Stella.
Okay, so it seemed that as far as the audio, that it may not have gone well um, with a number of locations, but to capture some of what was being covered, it's just both uh, uh, Dr. Sterkin and Verheeren were part of our eighth ICAT, and they were very enthused with the work uh, that Father Godfrey Ngoma was doing with regards to the Songhai village, and they were projecting the model of this eco-agro village as something that should be spread globally. And then they also were looking at how, within the context of African universities, both historically black colleges and universities in the U.S. and globally, how they could play a particular role in terms of promoting that. Um, I'm going to try to, uh, okay, I see Hattie had gotten off and back on. Let's make her a panelist again. Because Hattie is our next presenter, and I'm going to try to show her a short video, and we'll see if that comes across any better. But I know before we've had this issue with regards to showing videos in a setting like this, not just on WebEx, but it can be an issue of the bandwidth. So let me see if we can show this second video. So I'm going to start the video and let me know if you can't hear it. And then if it is, I'm going to try another option if you can't hear it.
Museum of African American Technology Science Village, which will use the money to further its vision of allowing children to play and have fun with science. A mosquito has a proboscis, an antenna, a pulpus, an eye, a thorax, a picture of a mosquito. We have the beginnings of our new exhibit that feature outstanding scientists and engineers. We have about 20 more of these that we will place. A community coming together to ensure its survival. Kumasi Aaron.
So that was a short clip of Hattie's with the Maya Museum. I'm glad at least people said they could hear this one. I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Hattie Carwell to discuss how the work she's doing there can relate to us promoting our AT declaration and moving us toward an appropriate technology manifesto. Hattie.
Good morning, everyone. Although it's not quite midnight where I am in Oakland, California, the Museum of African American Technology is a unique place, probably only in the United States, dedicated to sharing the achievements of Americans in science and engineering, and also to create an awareness with the community of the impact of science on a life. It's a place where you can have at the same time is that you can get better understanding of certain technology policies, activities that really drove the quality of science village. We go back to ancient principles of math, harmony, rest, order. Now, we look at science and engineering, always at in the back of my mind, being just in harmony with the rest of our reciprocity. Something we is what we propose that it's like and we have you ask the it and what we um, and technology much aware what what will use and John.
Uh, Thank you, Hattie. For a minute, I didn't know whether you were pausing or whether that was a finishing sentence. Thank you, Hattie. I think that you have certainly, with the museum, been an inspiration to a number of people. As she mentioned, this is a unique museum, and she has really put her heart into it over the years. And I was happy to see in the video how it expanded from its initial inception. I want to turn it over to Brian. Brian, do you need to do a screen share?
I do.
Okay, let me I'll give you privileges to that then. Yeah, I've made you a presenter now, so you should be able to do the screen share at the bottom.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Um, my name is Brian Stevenson, and 2 years ago, I started a nonprofit called Passion of Hope International. In my other life, I am a civil structural engineer in Baltimore, Maryland, and I've been running an engineering firm for over 35 years. I'm currently in Benin and having a new life. Passion of Hope International is a nonprofit that ultimately I say it started because I've been coming to ICAT conferences since 2004. And in the same way, if you go to the tech fair, you see that Gada Kadota out of Sudan was inspired with Bunker Roy at the fourth ICAT to do grandmothers for solar, or I forget the term. So this is where I am. And the other thing is that through John Tharakan, I was connected at Howard University with Engineers Without Borders. And in the Kenya project that we had, I met Isaac Soda, who is a Kenyan doing Running Water International. So the relationship of Brian Stevenson and Isaac Soda came together to create Passion of Hope International. Also at the Rwanda conference of ICAT, I met Stella Odaba, and Stella is now executive assistant coming from Nairobi to help the same effort. So I'm going to speak about what's the problem and what is the need for appropriateness and how we as a nonprofit are trying to respond to that need. These pictures were actually, that you're seeing, were actually taken and part of a presentation back in 2006 when I presented at the ICAT on Haiti. But what we see is on the left, sustained ecological damage, which leads to urbanization And the buildings on the right, representing Port-au-Prince, Haiti, have all collapsed since we had that big earthquake. But ultimately, the slide tells you that inappropriate land use policy contributes to deforestation. And when that happens, farmers can't be productive with their land, and they abandon or they send their children off to the big city. Speaking of Haiti, Christopher Columbus said that all these islands are fertile, and this one is particularly so. It has many large harbors, finer than any I know, in Christian lands, and many large rivers. All this is marvelous. The land is high and has many ranges of hills and mountains, incomparably finer than Tenerife in Spain's Canary Islands. All are most beautiful and various in shape. All are accessible. They are covered with tall trees of different kinds which seem to reach the sky. This is Haiti today. This is Haiti today. And it's because of inappropriate land use policies. Wealthy countries have benefited from the plundering of Africa and the global South. And this has been done through exploiting their natural resources by enslaving and beggaring these people in the South and imposing land use and agricultural solutions which degrade their natural habitat. In this particular case, there was Green Revolution created by the Rockefeller Foundations in the 50s. It sounded good, but the whole idea was to impose their land use and agricultural solutions coming off of World War II with the big DuPont and Dow Chemical having large munitions and nitrogen reserves, and they started to put it into their pesticides and into their the phosphates. They started to put it into in the fertilizers. I'm sorry. So that has been imposed throughout the global South, and we are seeing the effects of it. And lastly, enjoying the free occupation of environmental space for waste discharge. I think recently it was, I think it might have been China or Asia, which started to reject all of the U.S. plastics which have been dumped over there. So the question of what to do with the plastic is a big problem. This picture is a good image of what I'm talking about. This is global GDP, 2018. Sorry. Hold on. This is 2018 global GDP. You see the distinction between the global South and the global North. Africa being the tiniest strip, which in actuality, Africa is larger than the US and China and Europe. So PHI's mission, Passion of Hope's mission, is to reduce systemic poverty in marginalized and impoverished communities appropriately, and we do it through social enterprise and investment. Pulling from criteria from the AT Manifesto on what appropriateness is, I have some bullet points, but the priority is to the most disadvantaged populations towards worldwide egalitarianism. And we do that by, which is a human right, the need for clean air and water, the need for food security, for accessible and available health care, for adequate shelter, for clean energy, adequate and relevant education, and access to information and truthful communication. Again, truthful communication. The communities must be empowered to do this, especially the least empowered in society, the women, the children, the disabled, oppressed minorities. And we need to look in the future, preserving these resources for the future. Technology development and technology processes, how they're deployed, must sensitivity, maintain ecological balance, and foster broad economic sustainability. So this is the that the INAT has generally embraced. But then we heard from Father Zamojo this morning. He says it simply, the only way to fight poverty is to make the poor productive. And so that's what Passion of Hope wants to do. How can we make the poor productive? So we've picked these 5 areas of water, sanitation, and health, WASH, education of the next generation, healthcare, housing, community infrastructure, livelihoods, and food security. All related. We can't just do one or the other, and that piecemeal. It has to be integrated. It has to be done together. So this picture represents the village in Gil, the Morop area of Nakuru County, and my partner, Isaac Soda from Passion of Hope, Kenya, met with these women back in, I think it was in March or so, and agreed to covenant amongst themselves and form groups of 10. Their problem, they would spend hours upon hours through dry season, going up the hill 6-10 kilometers to fetch water. When they got to had to wait in line, over 100 people in line for their turn. Imagine what the situation would be back at home if they had little children that were left unattended. So generally, they sent their young daughter. So girls have to go fetch. That means they can't go to school. And their education is now limited, and their future is now limited. So based on that, we have made a deal with them. They put in their savings, and they call it table banking in Kenya. We're doing a form of microfinance where they put in their savings. We bought these water tanks and have installed it for each of those community members, paying us back. It's an investment, so they will pay us back over the next 18 months at a rate that's very affordable to them. Her house, where she also put money in to build a foundation for the water tank. And we came with the tank and the gutter connections and put them all together. We can now begin to look at some of the other issues in the household, because when we went to her house, we did a survey of We figured out what their sanitation problems were. We figured out if there were elderly in the house. We figured out how many children were in the house. And now that they have more time, because the water is right there, we can begin to talk about the next thing to help make them whole, whether it's education or health, whatever. So this picture is in the same community. The schools have been equipped with water tanks so that the kids can go to school and have clean water. Again, if you don't have clean water in the school, you will always have just primary school children or boys. And it also leads to sickness and disease if hands are not washed and hygiene is poor. So we adopt the school and get the resources to equip them so the kids can keep on learning. The idea with the schools is that each school is not just for the education of the children, but it could be a center for the entire community. So imagine if the school also had Wi-Fi and solar energy and a garden where it could produce food. Imagine if the school was a center for the community where they could meet and plan and do adult education. So the idea, the vision, is to turn each of these schools into a center not just for education, also for community activity and learning. That image involves clean energy, housing for the teachers who are not adequately supported financially, libraries, all of the resources needed to make for a wholesome education. The women in this picture, the woman on the left is Isaac's wife. She is a trained licensed pharmacist, and they run a clinic in the community. And there's a second clinic that we're working. These clinics are operating at bare bones dollars. The government has a health care plan and health insurance, but it costs roughly $5 per month, which is way above what the poor could actually pay for. So we're trying to operate these clinics at a level where they pay $1 to $2 per month. To do this effort, we have started a memorandum of understanding with the African Leadership University in Mauritius, which is another transformative university on the continent. There's also one in Rwanda, and we're looking with them to get some of their students to come and do the first level of planning, which is collecting data on the community and what the needs are so that we can then move to physical infrastructure expansion of these clinics and to make them stronger and more financially viable. These are some of the things that this primary care facility tends to deal with, which is pharmaceuticals, HIV/AIDS, nutrition, access, maternity care, elderly care, all of that, and substance abuse. We would be the first level of medical service in these communities and begin to form linkages with tertiary care facilities as well. The housing and community infrastructure has not gotten started. but ultimately we're dealing with first rainwater harvesting and then latrines and quality of buildings. And when we do the buildings, it probably would be in a way that the community businesses are formed. So if you can make your own brick or block, it starts a business, and we would strengthen those houses that way. I'm also looking at solutions for better roofs, because most of the continent is dependent on metal roofs, which are problematic and not eco-friendly. So the other part is just livelihoods and food security and empowering people to form businesses, invest in people with businesses that answer triple P: people, profit, planet. We will not make an investment in any business unless those three criteria are being met, that it's beneficial to the environment, even restorative to the environment, as well as providing funds for you and your family and your children, and also, yeah, and paying it forward as well, where you lift up somebody else as we have helped lift you up. And the last line here is, because we're focused on the rural poor, which is where most of the poor are, building a strong agriculture is a huge part of doing that. For example, once they have clean water, it may be helping them get some goats, or start a chicken farm, or start growing some corn, or start growing something. So we begin to focus on smallholder farmers in a sustainable way to move that ahead. Here in Benin, a few weeks ago, we met with the mayor of this commune called Tori Bosito, which is 45 minutes outside of the main city, Cotonou. That's what Hope is doing, and in forming a partnership where we can come in and get to know their community and bring some of solutions that we may have after we and hear what they want and what's needed. This is the only picture I took that day, but it is reflective of a hospital. That is, there's some other buildings on the lot, but essentially there's no water, no electricity, no facilities. They are really lacking. And so as we move forward with that community, it would be to look at how we can make that whole for the benefit of the community. And then this last slide was just from 2 days ago on Monday as part of INAT 9. We had our first breakthrough workshop on approach in agriculture, focused on medium scale farms, but also simultaneously the smallholder farms. And so using Zoom, and we had our team of as well as Dr. Poulang from South Africa, from Mael in Benin. We put together every list is a very dynamic and they formed teams. One is Jabali, Takula, or people a lot for the whole, and it's so that you've heard this from Father Zamoja. foundation is not Africa's future dead. So they have to be able to thrive in the midst of medium scale and scale so that the communities are growing. Nothing is wasted in New African Revolution and Dancing with Nature. All of these can be traced to Father Zamoto. Mantra for what we're doing. Hula group is the word for food at the end. Food chain from farmer to when it gets to the market and all of the products in between. And these groups have covenanted to work over the course of the next year to goals that is yet direction for. It is certainly entrepreneurial, and it is anchored in the farmer, benefiting the farmer, and making Africa strong, making Africa strong. We call it Kilimo Bunufu, which is Swahili for innovative agriculture. And if it were not for these participants, it wouldn't happen. We did not want to do what Father Zamojo said, which is talk, talk, talk. So after 2 intensive days, we came out with 3 teams that have a charge that they created, and they will be empowered. Passion and Hope will be behind them to make it happen. I don't know a lot about other NGOs because I'm speaking about NGOs and nonprofits and appropriate technology. I do know that some of their ways are not appropriate. I know that there are some organizations where when you give to that organization, 50% or so goes to the administration and then the rest goes to wherever the need is. And there's a lot of questionable philanthropy in this space. And so we are trying to do it appropriately. Our focus is on the people, and we've limited operations to whatever comes in, 85% of it will go out to the cause. And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Brian. That seems like quite a lot the Passion of Hope is doing. I'm very impressed that it's such a young organization engaging so actively. At this point, I'm going to return the share so I can put up the slides and we can get into a discussion about the way forward. So I need to make myself the presenter, share. So we had talked about the aims and the objectives, and one of the things with the objectives is to look at both organizations signing into the current Appropriate Technology Declaration, and also look at how to actively promote moving forward from the declaration, which is just a single page to manifesto. So I start by, sort of, since Brian was the last one on, to raise with him as an example of his organization in terms of you gave plenty of I think examples of how you're actually living or manifesting what we say in the declaration. But I think one of the things we also want to do is to make sure organizations, whether they're the Mayat Museum or Passion for Hope that is visibly displayed, for instance, on just as it's the AT declaration is on our website. How do you see us moving to get NGOs like yours to display that on websites and to sort of put this as part of your ethics, just as you have mentioned many of the things that came out of the Songhai as being key ethical points that you actually follow. Brian?
Organizations such as mine, as NGOs, to put on our website this AT manifesto. I think that the manifesto first needs to be worked on, so there's general agreement. But what websites are doing, say, highlighting the Sustainable Development Goals. That is what, if they're going to say what we embrace as far as how we're addressing what, they highlight the Sustainable Development Goals. So what we would have a way to complement that.
Okay. Actually, I'm making a distinction between the one-page AT declaration, which we have on our site, and then the effort in terms of developing appropriate technology manifesto, because what that's the direction we want to go in, and I think that you raised a good point in terms of the sustainable development goals as being key points that not only NGOs but organizations, even universities, when we're looking at proposals and projects, we're asked to reflect on how does this link into that. So I think you're raising the point that in the development of a manifesto, in the bigger picture of what we're trying to do, we need to look at that. I gather that's a point you're trying to make, Brian?
I would agree. I do think complementary, because the goals don't answer the how. The how must be appropriate. So if an organization could say we are meeting Sustainable Development Goals 1, 3, 5, 7, they could also say we are doing it following AT Manifesto 3986, whatever those will be, so that there is a parallel with the how and the destination, the fact that they're working on these goals. Again, like I said, you can do a lot of things to help poverty, but you could do it unsustainably, not culturally sensitive, and you never really have an impact. So the way that you do it is what I think, as a manifesto, I think that's the way that we do it is what we're focused on, as well as the heart.
I'm going to unshare the screen so I can see what questions or comments are being raised, and we can open up for, this is supposed to be more of a discussion, so.
Is there a question?
Brian, I have a question. This is Hattie.
Yeah.
In working with your nonprofit or NGO, how do you change the mindset of people in terms of what their values are when you talk to them about what's most important to strive for, to improve their way of life. Nowadays, the world is one. People look around them and see the values or attitudes that people seem to glorify because they have more. How do you keep people true to form rather than lusting after material things? How do you change that mindset?
Hattie, number one, I just have to be true to me. And in being true to me, hopefully others see that. And sometimes what we do is we find one another. So for example, the workshop in planning it just about 2 months ago, I ran into a representative whose child goes to Rebecca's school from TechnoServe, which I had never heard about. Turns out TechnoServe is considered #1 in poverty eradication as a nonprofit in the world. And they're here in Benin. And we found each other. Their mantra is the same as ours. They are very focused on doing it right, doing it sustainably. And so from an organizational standpoint, I believe we find each other. I think people also find each other. In the room with me now is a young man named Mael, who helped us with the presentation and planning yesterday. He's from Benin. He should be at university right now at University of South Florida, but COVID sent him back. So he's Mael to university in South Florida from Benin, wanting to become a doctor and to go to medical school. And just in our conversations over the last week or so, including today, we were talking about what you're talking about, Hattie. We were talking about the values that something in the West is better than here. The values that going to medical school might be better over there than here on the continent. And all of that is changing. He has interacted with Father Zamojo. He has seen these things now, which living in Benin, he had never even seen, and it was right under his nose. So if I can put him on the spot, I can ask him to say just a few words as that future, as a young man trying to figure out where is he going to go, because maybe it's not school anymore, and maybe it's African centered. Mael is on. He's asking me what should he say. I'll let him speak, however. He said, wow.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mael, and I met Brian a few months ago. And I heard he's setting up the Kilimo Bonito workshop for the ninth ICAT. So I believe that what he's doing and how Passion of Hope internationally interacting with the community, it has changed. Personally, it has changed my mind regarding the world, regarding how I can affect, what is the impact that I can have in my country. I feel really grateful to have been able to interact with people like Father Zamujo and many other brilliant people throughout Africa that are looking to create good changes in the agricultural sector. So I think that this this comes down to everybody having the same heart. Everybody having the same heart to create changes, to empower the African continent and to go out of come out of the way we have been teaching to think everything we knew from how we grew up, the media, everything. But being able to connect and interact with people, I think this we are able to grow together. I'll so,
Hattie, you have a follow-up question, or does anyone else have a follow-up question for this young man?
How about
In terms of, the whole thrust of this workshop, in terms of moving us toward not only recognizing the current appropriate technology declaration, but to moving us to put into form much of what we're talking about practicing into a manifesto. We need youth like you to be part of that process. So one of the objectives of this session is to actually form a team that will further. I know Brian had put together various ideas on the manifesto in an earlier point. I'd like to know if the two of you would be willing to be part of a broader team that we can put together that can further this effort toward a manifesto.
Yes, yes, of course.
Hattie, you were going to ask something?
I'm simply going to say, when you think of the word manifest, and basically to make it real, you can have all kinds of plans and goals and ideas, but at the end of the day, as Brian said, how will you make this become the way or the direction? Because we're really talking about how can you change someone's world view. Some given you are, given your circumstances, given your values, given your culture, how are you going to make life reflect the best of you, as opposed to pursuing life and mimicking others? They may have lost their way in trying to reach their nirvana or the ideal lifestyle. So what I wanted to ask is, how, other than and seeing alternative ways of how things can be done, and reflecting on some of these alternative ways, how are you going to stay the course and, using the same word, manifest a life that you may be seeing just is there any particular strategy you have to learn more and have a deep and involved relationship with the appropriateness and making life better by using a new way as you find your way, because you're a person and you'll have many experiences. So how do you intend to stay the course? I'm basically asking about vision to make this something that you can dedicate yourself to.
When I see appropriateness, when I think about appropriateness in technology and manifesting and everything, I think the way to make other people adopt that kind of perception, including people like me. Basically, the first thing that comes in my mind is show them, being able to show them what they can accomplish, being able to show them the vision, being able to be clear regarding why we are willing to do this. And looking at this, I think about Father Zamuzo, who, regardless of his past career, because he was already teaching in the US, a lot of African people who have never come back here again to say, I will help my country. But he did not stand over there and say, that should change, that should change. But he came and showed us. I've never seen that before. I've never seen, although I'm in Benin, I've never been into the center. I've never known, I've never known that something like that was happening in my country. Where the world is fighting or is struggling to be able to reduce um, uh, the negative effect of the progress that the world is trying to reach. Whereas everything is happening and we are having bad climate conditions, Father Zamdo was able, with people around him, young people that he friends, he has been able to implement and create and show them that this can be done. And we are doing this because of that, because of what we want Africa to do. So I think show them. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, I, I think that it's important for us to to have both the youth and the seasoned people like Brian engaged together. Uh, I'd like us to try to move along the lines of how to move forward in terms of the objectives from this workshop, in terms of us actually looking at how we can go about forming a team to to further the work that we initiated earlier, Brian, with regards to the manifesto, and in line with one of the things that you mentioned, like the SDGs. I think also that various organizations have their own vision statements, their own on their websites, on their location. I'm sure, for instance, Mayat has certain uh, ethical statements that are displayed there. How can we can we form a team that will then look at how to take what we're currently articulating as these principles and link that in with the work that we're doing with INAT to formulate this manifesto that would be broader and then could encompass the positions of more organizations that are in line with the work we're doing, like the Songhai Center.
John, I think that, I like the question. I think that if we could get this group that you're talking about to reflect at least half of them being young people. From the workshop that we had yesterday, I heard young voices, young entrepreneurial voices who are energetic and they see the vision. If we could get them on the table to be part of defining this and carry it forward, I think that's big. At least half young.
So do you,
Thing, one
uh,
thing you can do is look at the declaration and look around your immediate environment and see if you can do one-to-one matches. Look at the attributes that are put forth in the declaration and see if you can identify them being in it in whatever project you may be involved in, and to begin to look when you see projects have this mantra in your mind. Is this consistent with the declaration? And because I think as you see inconsistencies, it would lead you to changes or directions that you need to take if you truly believe in the declaration and about trying to make it a reality, that it becomes a way of life as opposed to, it will be a way of life, a chosen way that you would like to see your life laid out. So it's not something separate from you, it becomes a part of you and your thinking.
well, I think that one of the things that we at INET are going to have to do, since we all have signed on to the declaration, is we're collectively going to have to work out how to share it more broadly. I mean, it's on our website, but we have not really, I think, reached out to to post it other places, to send it out. For instance, I had the discussion with regards to universities, and part of my early discussion with Chuck was that, okay, you're on the Senate at the university, and you even have a committee for ethics there. Why not take the declaration to your ethics committee at the university and say, look, here is the ethical line we need to present. Can we, as the university's faculty senate, agree to support and post this declaration that on appropriate technology? So somehow we have to, I think, both for what we already have said we stand for now 10 years ago, have to promote it more. And part of that, in terms of the effort that I think we need to really follow up on, Brian, was when you took it beyond the one page and put together various ideas on how to extend it to the manifesto. And I think that's the direction. If we want this area of INAT work to be an effective part of our mission, we have to expand it broader. And part of that in this workshop, the idea was to actually be able to form a team. I think we are lacking in terms of numbers of people from different directions here, but I think we need to at least amongst us come to some kind of understanding that we need to go beyond in terms of putting the word out, and it needs to be in some organized fashion. The other comments from, I see, I don't know if Junbei is still with us. He wants, he is,
John, I'd like to hear more from the participants in the room.
that's what I'm saying. I see Junbei is one of the participants. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of participants left.
He's
And it's,
still in the room.
I'm sorry, Hattie.
Junbei's name appears
That's what I
in the
said. Yeah.
list of attendees.
And Tharkan was on for a minute, but I don't think he's on now. So,
One person that I recognize on the participant list is Damian Williams. If he can hear, is it possible to give him the mic? Or to ask him to say something?
Hello, it's Damien. Yeah, how are you doing?
How are you, Damian?
I'm very good. Thanks again for yesterday, Brian.
Not a problem.
Sorry, I'm in and
calling-
out of this today, so I've been missing things. I've just stepped back to my computer now, and it just happened to be right at the point when you said, "Hey, can you contribute?"
Not a problem.
Cool.
The discussion is about appropriate technology as a manifesto and the values. And
Yeah.
if you had any thoughts from what you were able to pick up in the presentation.
Yeah.
Maybe I put you on the
Well, like I said, I just stepped in, so I've missed a bit of the context and what you've already discussed. But I think Father Nzimando really he drove the point home about how certain technologies are applicable in spaces and in African contexts, and we've focused heavily on the new as opposed to the old. You know, there's a big focus on, and I think if we can get especially our young people, if we can wrap their heads around the fact that people of old were empirical scientists, that they were people who they did stuff because it worked, not because the market had told them it worked. And so our traditional knowledge systems are actually very scientific because they were completely evidence-based. There was no marketing, there was no hoo-ha. They were the first scientists. So if we can elevate our ancient knowledge to the fact that they're not primitive peoples, but they were our first scientists and be revered, then I think that's a good starting point, or at least it's a point that really, you know, if we can elevate the past again, because we spent 100, 200, 300, 400 years denigrating the past, pretending like it was primitive. And if you look at us socially now, they were so advanced socially. And so we've gone backwards socially and advanced technologically. And so if we can elevate that status of our elders again and our old knowledge and then bring it into the fore, where again, like we said a little bit yesterday, if we can make it a little bit sexier for the young people, it's not, you know, it's, then I think then the appropriateness starts to come into play again, because when you start talking appropriate technologies, a lot of the time people start to then again think, okay, we're going backwards. We need to go back to hand tools. We need to go back to, so it's that remolding. So much of today is about perception. And if we can tackle some of those perceptions, so elevate our old knowledge, get people back to thinking that those were our first scientists and we should really revere them. And then we can start to then say that, look, even though certain technologies may look simpler, they are appropriate, and we should be using the smartest thing for the application, not necessarily the newest thing.
Well said. Thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question or if how that contributes, but that's yeah.
thank you. Thank you. I'm going to see if I can get Junbei on. I'm going to unmute him and see if he has any input. Junbei, are you with us?
I do actually. I was sitting here and listening to the conversation, but also preparing for my next workshop. And one of the things that was going through my mind. So I'm leading a workshop on using Raspberry Pis for prototyping in about an hour and a half. And one of the things that's been going through my mind is just the concept of, so a Raspberry Pi is a low cost computer that you can use for a number of different hardware purposes. And one of the things that's been going through my mind is that even though some of the advances that have come out as far as having technologies that are accessible, like the Raspberry Pi, it's low cost, it's easy to procure. I think it's challenging because it still is produced in the same system and by the same producers that produce all of the other hardware, all of the other technology that we depend on, and so the socially speaking, some of the minerals required to produce the chips on the Raspberry Pi are linked to conflict, at the very least, in the DRC. And very few companies actually release reports on their sourcing of these materials. And environmentally, one of my worries is about overconsumption. If some of these parts are cheap enough to be accessible, then they may be considered disposable. And think about them as disposable, then given the sad state of electronics recycling and the high carbon emission cost and such, it gets us in a very dangerous position. So just kind of speaking as a practitioner, it's challenging, not to absolve myself at all, but it's challenging to live by the values of appropriate technology when and also recognize that we exist in this larger system that is not abiding by those values at all times. So I don't know. That's one of the thoughts that was going through my mind with the conversation.
Thank you, Junbei. That's, I think, a good way of putting it within a particular context. And when you were saying that, I couldn't help but think how years ago I confronted an activist friend of mine that asking for their cell number, and she just berated me in terms of how could I have a cell phone because of coltan being a key element in the cell phone, and she didn't have a cell phone, and it was very hard to communicate. And as you know now, it's even more difficult if someone takes the purest view that I refuse to have a cell phone because it has coltan, and the coltan may have been illegally elicited from the Congo employing child labor. So there's difficulty with regard to that. But this is also why I've been so emphatic about why we need to impact technology policy on a broader scope. And the view I have in terms of it, if we have a broad-based team that's international, that includes the youth, includes senior academics like Prof. Mamamuchi, who is a Sarsi chair in innovation and does a number of talks around issues from innovation to liberation. If we include people like this on a team that can then forward a manifesto in a broader sense, and in that process we engage a range of institutions from museums to NGOs, that this manifesto can be more broad-based and can be a vehicle for us to really promote the type of change we're talking about in technology policy. So this is what I hope we can leave here with at least those of us here who are part of it as part of the team. and to look at a plan for expanding such a team that can use this broad base, which engages academics, engages NGOs, engages museums, engages government agencies for this type of endeavor. We're winding down in terms of this. So what I wanted to do is to offer participants and panelists to say last minute or two in terms of us closing this out. I'll start with you, Hattie.
I'm sorry. I've been thinking that, to be fair, the older people are always looking to the young to accomplish the miracles that those who are now old never really did in their own youth. The thinking has been that we need to provide some analytical tools to the young, tools that help them to recognize that which may be going in the wrong direction or inconsistent. Meaning, if expose them the beginnings of models, may not be complete models, but they present themselves having attributes of that which we would like to be more of the future as opposed to more of the same. That to be very critical, just because we can do it, does not mean that's what we should be doing. That there should be some philosophical outlook, the meaning of a successful life, or improving conditions so that life is reflective of our best thinking, not just what exists. That if we come up with them with some tools that can be used to assess what is going on around them. Because if you're in a position to assess the good and bad of a situation, you have a better chance of improving it and aligning it with the objectives of the declaration we've talked about. It's an awareness that has to be built based on experience.
Thank you, Hattie. Brian,
Yeah.
would you like to add a closing remark?
I would simply say that most of us, I think I'm now an old head, we were impacted in our youth. I know you were. I remember 1980 in grad school, I wrote a whole paper to myself about appropriate technology, not for anybody's purposes, just for me. And then 20 something years later, I ran into you and John. So I think focusing on the youth is important, and these values that we're talking about are eternal, just helping your neighbor and reaching out for those who are least in our society. I think if we, in our own world, as Patty said, exemplify that and pull others up, and as Mael said, demonstrate we can begin to impact our world, and that's also, you know.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, that when you mentioned that writing the paper to yourself, I thought about how actually about 10 years before we had our first conference, I presented a paper talking about appropriate technology in Africa at an NTA conference. Uh, then, so that this is something that does go back with many of us before before INAT even. Uh, Reflecting on what you're saying, Hattie, I think that an integral part of any manifesto that we would have to develop would include the kind of tools for assessing uh, the various situations we're confronted with in terms of assessing how they're using technology and uh, um, uh, how they may or may not uh, be employing appropriate technology. So that I think is part of an important part that you raised, so that the manifesto becomes a instrument of not only popularizing appropriate technology, but allows us to link in terms of the visions that are shared with the different organizations, but also serves to as a tool for us to sort of spotlight and assess uh, what is going on in the various situations that we observe around technology and technology policy. But I'd like to close this session on the note that we, both as INET, have to move forward with encouraging more to embrace our current appropriate technology declaration, but also to further development of the team that we set out in this workshop to develop with regards to the formulation of a broader appropriate technology manifesto. So I wanted to thank the audience and to thank our guest. Unfortunately, Dr. Therkin and Dr. Herring could not be here. I know that some people could hear the video, others could just see it, but that will be available uh, to everyone and part of the package that we'll be providing post-conference in terms of what was used and gained from each of our workshops. So thank you. And we, after this, we now will be followed in this room after our break with a workshop, as Junbei mentioned, with Raspberry Pi that starts in approximately an hour. And we will at the same time have parallel paper sessions in rooms B, C, and D that will be papers presented as part of the conference from different practitioners and academics. So I know when everyone will be very engaged in the various sessions, and I look forward to more. Uh, I also know that later today that Junpei will be meeting with the Techathon teams, and I he has reached out with them. Did you want to say anything with regards to that we may share with other people here? Let me unmute you.
Sure. I will be sending out some. Actually, if anyone would like to sit in on that session, please contact me by email. The easiest to remember email, just send an email to ICAT, or I'm sorry, 9thicat@gmail.com. I'll get it there. I'd like to sit in on the feedback session for the Techathon project ideas. We would love to have more people offering their inputs and coming from additional perspectives for the teams doing the work.
Okay, thank you. For those that are new to ICAT and INAT, this is a new venture that we're doing at this conference in terms of the Techathon, where we're involving teams of students. So many of us are excited about this new edition. And they'll be actually engaging in investigating possible designs related to appropriate technology, and this process will last through the next couple of months, and they'll present uh, their results in January. So you'll learn more about that as we proceed through the conference. So at this, I want to thank everybody again. And if there are any other comments, we can, I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A, so we will leave it at that. Thank you very
Can I
much.
make one comment? Sorry.
Yes.
Just going back to Happy's comment about critical thinking, and in today's world, there's a serious lack of it. And one of the things that's weighed heavily on me is that we don't have young people interacting with the greatest training program for reality, and that is nature. You know, we live in this reality and we live in this world. And if you engage with nature and the world around you, you learn about physics, you learn about critical thinking, you learn about problem solving. Kids naturally should be learning these things. And I think one of the starting points is getting children back engaged with nature and growing things in a way that then critical thinking is just a logical outcome. It's not something, you know, at the moment we sit them down in classrooms and we don't say, here, play this game of chess with this master, and then ask them afterwards, what do you learn? We say to them, hey, this is the game of chess. What do you think you might learn if you played against this person? So it's very disjointed.
Yes, that, you know, the connection between critical thinking and nature, I think, is key. And when people appreciate that more, they'll actually appreciate the importance of maintaining Mother Earth. So I think comment. Thank you, everyone. We are just at the top of the hour, and this is the scheduled end of this session. And I look for everyone to be part of the next sessions. During this break, you can. This is an opportunity to visit the tech fair and the posters that we have. And you can actually use the link on the program to take you directly to that. It's the tech fair link on the program that's on the website. So, thank you, everybody.
I turn the host back over to you. Now, when I played that video by John Thayer, you heard it?
I didn't. It's music. I've got many songs, so I couldn't really tell. I've got with the rooms open here with me.
Okay.
I didn't pay attention to room A.
Okay, I thought you were dealing with room A and then somebody else.
I'm saying I've got all the rooms open here for me to be able to overview everyone, just in case there is an issue and I can go to assist.
Why is the Billy come to me, he interrupted my session asking about extending something? Coming to you.
That's
Did she come to you?
for what?
She was talking about the paper presented that having a hard time.
Yeah, I guess she gave it to me after coming to you. I don't know. I don't know what
Okay, we need to get
came
that
to you.
straight. I mean, I'm in the middle trying to facilitate the session.
Yeah.
He tape person, you got everybody's screen on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's why I came in early to see if you could get sound. Yes.
It was the sound. Your sound.
No, I asked if